I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
Mr. President, the Syrian government has achieved significant progress during the last few months, which are unprecedented and which prove the keenness by the Syrian government on supporting national reconciliation and local settlements, which is the unwavering approach that proved efficient in enabling Syrians to go back to normalcy and harnessing the potentials and energies towards the process of building the future of Syria together with its independence and progress. I have informed you of the amnesty decree which was issued by the President of the Republic on the 30th of April, which is exceptional when it comes to its legal, social, and political nature. This decree benefited a host of the detainees and prosecuted within the country and without it, and the implementation thereof is still underway. Diplomatic missions abroad have opened the doors to receive the applications and requests of Syrians who would like to benefit from the decree and providing them with support to regularize their status. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on a daily basis receives a number of those requests and refer the same to the competent bodies to respond to the same as soon as practicable. The institutions in the state of Syria continue their efforts to strengthen the legal and legislative architecture and to develop laws to be aligned with the requirements. Over the last few months, a number of important decrees and laws have been enacted to regulate a number of points. For example, the possession of weapons and ammunition and preventing the illicit trafficking thereof, amending the penal code, abolishing the the life imprisonment with hard labor, as well as the enforcement of the criminalization of torture. Mr. President, Damascus witnessed the fourth session of the International Conference of the Return of Syrian Refugees, which attests unequivocally to the strong will of the Syrian government to continue to remove all impediments on the way of the safe, dignified, and voluntary return by refugees to their places of origin. And I would like to say in front of all of you that those states that prevent Syrian refugees from returning to their homeland have to stop those practices and to refrain from placing impediments that prevent them from returning freely and with dignity. And this requires, in the first place, to lift the unilateral coercive measures imposed on Syria, which kill the people of Syria and which are totally unjustifiable. The city of Nur Sultan witnessed the 18th meeting on Syria according to the Astana format, and the concluding statement stressed the importance of maintaining the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of Syria, and stressed yet anew of actions to be taken to combat terrorism, as well as Daesh and al-Nusra Front, together with their affiliated individuals and entities, including those that constitute a threat to civilians within and without the de-escalation zone in Idlib. The statement also refuses all attempts to create a new reality on the ground, including what is called the autonomy initiatives, as well as separatist agendas in northeastern Syria. The statement also denounces the actions taken by certain states that support separatist militias and terrorist entities. The statement condemns the ongoing Israeli military attacks against Syria, which jeopardize the stability and security in the region, and called for the cessation thereof. It also declared its refusal of all UCMs imposed on the Syrian people, as well as the illegal diversion of oil revenues that should end up in Syria. The statement also welcomes the mutual release of a number of abductees and detainees that took place on 13th of June within the framework of the Working Group on the Release of Detainees and Abductees. Syria reiterates its appreciation of the Russian and Iranian guarantors in this regard and condemns the practices of the Turkish regime, which reneges on its commitments according to the Astana agreement and Sochi. In this regard, we reiterate our rejection and our condemnation of the statements by the Turkish regime of establishing what is called the safe zone in northern Syria and its Sabbagh rattling and beating the drums of war and its continuation of the aggressive policies, including displacement, killing, demographic changes, ethnic cleansing with invalid pretexts just to serve its own political ulterior motives and to cover up on its accumulating crises and exporting the same to abroad, which could threaten peace and security in the region. Mr. President, my delegation listened to the briefing of Mr. Geir Pedersen, and my country has attentively followed the Constitutional Committee in its 8th round, and we look forward to the 9th round after the Special Envoy finds solutions to the logistic problems that were raised by a number of parties. It's very regrettable that the party that was nominated by Turkey and which claims to represent Syrians continues obdurately insist on hindering any progress in the work of the constitution, as it propagates ideas that run counter to the will of the Syrian people and which de-services its aspirations and vision for a better future where peace and stability prevail. How come for a Syrian to justify the continuity of UCMs that are suffered by every single Syrian in their daily life? On top of that, this person is calling for imposing more UCMs. How come for any Syrian to publicly call for external military intervention in the internal affairs of his country? My country is committed to a political solution based on Syrian national dialogue and a Syrian-owned and Syrian-led political process without any external interference. In this regard, we stress the importance of abiding by the TORs and rules of procedure while refusing any external interferences in its work or imposing any premeditated results or fabricated timelines. Mr. President, Syria regrets the failure by the Security Council to condemn the Israeli aggression against Damascus International Airport and denounces the impediments imposed by certain states on the Security Council's condemnation of that aggression under pretexts that clearly reflect the bias, or blind bias actually, to Israel. Syria stresses the importance of compelling Israel to cease its hysterical, recurrent, and ceaseless attacks on the inviolability of Syrian territories, which are organically linked to the crimes committed by terrorist organizations, as well as the U.S. and Turkish illegal troops on my territories, which all aim to perpetuate chaos and terrorism in the region, as well as blocking all prospects of a political solution chosen by Syrians and Syrians alone, away from all such egregious interferences. The failure by the Security Council to discharge its responsibilities suggests to member states in the UN that they cannot depend on international legitimacy. Rather, all member states have to bank on their own potentials to recover their rights. Mr. President, in conclusion, I would like to stress that the Syrian Arab Republic is a country with sovereignty, which takes pride in its national and Arab identity, and which makes its own decisions based on its own national will, while upholding its constitutional duties and caring for all Syrians. My country spares no effort toward the consolidation of amiable relations and constructive cooperation with all countries of the world, while upholding the principles of sovereignty and independence and non-interference in internal affairs. And we denounce the use of force or the threat of use of force in alignment with the priorities of the Syrian foreign policy to recover stability and peace without exclusion. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for their statement.